the Allen's Trust meeting on Keats on the Water Sustainability Act.
On Keats?
Yeah.
That's a private system, isn't it?
No. The Allen's Trust Quarterly Trust Council
Oh.
meeting is the 18th, 19th, and 20th. And it's being held at Barnabas on Keats.
Oh, have you been to Barnabas?
Oh, I've been to Barnabas, yeah.
Have you in the last year?
I haven't, no, this is it was 4 years ago, so we haven't been in the new
Oh,
building.
it's massive.
Yeah, they built a whole new conference. We were crammed into a little,
This thing here, it looks like little shacks from their other buildings. It is massive.
yeah.
Like the front is likely maybe 70 feet tall with a big A-frame. It's massive.
But did they keep the dining room and everything in the lodge, on the room part of the other building?
Yeah, they just built a brand new building, I think.
So the conference center.
I think so.
Hi.
You're up at the front here.
Oh, great.
Head of the
In
class.
case you can't remember who you are.
Well, that's good. You've actually, I don't think we've ever had a name.
Hi Steve, I'm Ross.
Yeah, nice to meet
Good to
you.
meet you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you wore glasses. I knew there was some reason why I was rooting in
Well, shall we get started here? I'd like to start by welcoming you all to the Municipal Water System Information Meeting for the Hood Point neighborhood. My name is Raj Hare. I started with the municipality in February, so relatively new to Bowen Island here. And just in terms of the meeting itself, what we'll be doing is we'll be going through the information meeting. And after the information meeting, we will have a meeting of the local advisory committee. You're welcome to stay for that as well. There'll be some elections and I guess information, more detailed information discussed about your water system there. So without any further ado, in the information meeting here, what we'll be doing is doing a quick overview of your water system, just some quick facts, and I've got a couple of graphs on consumption behavior, and then we'll be going over the financial results, essentially 2017 financial results, and then the 5-year financial plan from 2018 to 2022, and your capital plan. And then Bob will be talking about your capital works and also the drinking water quality report, which is an annual report that is filed with Coastal Health or Vancouver Coastal Health. So in terms of the Hood Point water system, there are 94 connections, plus or minus a couple there. Generally speaking, the 94 connections were there when the study was the report was done for Vancouver Coastal Health. And the water supply for Hood Point comes from Honeymoon Lake. And most of the infrastructure in that system was built in the 2000s. And you're charged a flat rate of $780 per connection. And I believe there is also a parcel tax which is charged in Hood Point as well, which is $240. I'll have to double check the amount, but there is a parcel.
300 per connection.
350. Okay. Okay, I was confusing it with one of the other water districts, so. And then the bill is sent out to property owners once a year. And essentially, in terms of consumption behavior, so here are all the connections in Hood Point, and you can see that, each point is so between 1 and 5 would be a property. And so basically, water consumption is all over the place, but on an average, a resident consumes about 37,600 gallons of water per year. Doesn't matter whether you're consuming 150,000 gallons or whether you're consuming 35,000 gallons, you're all paying the same price for your water in Hood Point. So there's no variable rates there. Just wanted to kind of show you that there's, on that very, very high point, which is showing high consumption, I'm assuming that is probably a water leak. Is that
I think that's Steve's place.
Thanks, Bob.
Oh, I thought it was Tom's garden.
Or get out of
Tom, one or the other.
So some of those high points might be water point, might have been leaks, so we don't adjust the volume for those.
I think Bob left the tap open somewhere.
So moving away from that to your 2017 financial results, essentially we collected $75,000 in user fees. That other revenue would be essentially what we would call lump sum payments. So if somebody is subdividing a property, they do connection fees and stuff, then that we would recover for the system. So be those, and interest that's earned on your reserve goes in there as well and gets added to the reserve account. And then parcel taxes of $29,400 were collected for total revenues of $119,000 in 2017. Your operating expense, so of the 119 that was collected in total, about $53,000 went to operating expenses, and $53,000 is just some of these items over here for operations, excluding the amortization, because the amortization is a non-cash expense, and we don't collect user fees for that. And we contributed $65,000 to the Hood Point Reserve for Capital Works, which was about $30,000 higher than what was budgeted. Essentially, it's $30,000 higher, $40,000 rather higher, because we collected that $10,000 in connection fees, and our operating expenses were about $30,000 less than budgeted in 2017. Any questions on the financial results before I move forward? If not, then I'm going to move over to the 5-year financial plan, which was approved by council in March of 2018. The 5-year financial plan is for the period from 2018 to 2022. And for 2018, essentially, I had taken the we did not change water rates at all from 2017. So revenue for 2018 was based on 2017. And I left the expenditures fixed as well for that year. And then for the outer years from 2019 to 2022, I just used a CPI index of 2% and expecting expenditures to grow by 2%. So revenue requirements will go up to cover that, because utilities in all municipalities are self-funded. They're self-funded essentially, so the users of the utility are required to cover the costs of operating that utility. And then moving over to the capital plan for the next 5 years. Essentially, I've got historical information for 2017. We didn't spend anything on in 2017. We budgeted $4,000, but we didn't have. We generally budget for potential replacement of your assets, and if nothing needs to be replaced, then we don't spend that money, and that money stays in the reserve. So essentially, money for capital works that we collect goes into your reserve, and then as we need to spend that money, it comes out of your reserve. If we don't use the money, then it just remains in the reserve. So we've got maintenance provisions for years 2019 to 2022 of about ranging between $10,000 and $12,000 a year. The utility vehicle over there that you see, that's a prorated cost. We replaced one of the utility vehicles in the utility fleet. That vehicle is used strictly for the utilities and not for any other function. So the cost of it was prorated based on the number of connections that are in Hood Point in comparison to the number of connections in the entire water system.
How many connections are there?
In the entire water system? Close to 1,000, Bob? I would say.
1,100 or something.
1,100, yeah.
In all of any system.
So in terms of your reserve balances, your opening reserve balance for this year is $364,000. We have a projected or budgeted contribution to reserves of $17,300 for 2018. And if we use what is in the budget on capital replacements of $12,500, your reserve balance will be at $370,000. If we don't use anything during the year, it'll be that much higher, so your reserve could potentially be $380,000 at the end of the year.
We bought the utility vehicle though, right?
Pardon?
Yes.
We bought the
it,
utility
yeah,
vehicle,
so,
yes.
yeah.
Any questions on the financial results here? If not, that's going to conclude the Raj part of the show, and I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
So just to let you know, the utility vehicle, it's the old red fire truck that we got from the fire hall. it's finally on its last leg, so we had to buy a different pickup truck. That's the utility vehicle.
Does it have big water drops on the side of it so we know it's the water vehicle?
Yep, it says utilities on it. So I'll go through the drinking water quality annual report. We have to do that for every water system, so I've read how many of these so far. So I zipped through them pretty fast, but if you have any questions about anything, just stop me and I'll try to explain what I was trying to say. So the first part, on page 3 or page 9 of 45, just talks about your water system, the administration, our staff. Everybody's familiar with how your water system works. All you guys know, you get your water from Honeymoon Lake, it comes down a pipe above ground, gets chlorinated and filtered. Then we go and talk about treatment, the water system itself. Then we go into the water quality. This is what Vancouver Coastal Health really wants to see. So we test every day at 3 spots in Hood Point. Hood Point Road, Eagle Cliff Road, and actually at the treatment plant to make sure what's coming out of the tank. Every day that's done, even at Christmas Day. So if you see the little truck there, that's what they're doing. That's just one of many things that they do. So this year, we took 153 samples. So we do samples every day, 3 of them a day in Hood Point, and then once a week we take water samples and we send them to Vancouver Coastal Health for checking for coliform and E. coli.
Sorry, you tested 3 yourself?
3 locations.
3 locations every day.
Yeah,
And
and
then-
then 3 a day, 3 times a day.
Oh, no,
Sorry, keep going, keep going.
sure, come on, heckle me. And then once a week we take 3 samples into Vancouver Coastal Health.
But what you're testing once a day is just the chlorine residual.
To make sure we have chlorine in the system.
Thank you.
So, there's a lot of things that we can't control, like the temperature and what's actually in the water. So if you go into page 8 or 14 to 45, it just gives you all the samples, what the high and the low of parts per million of chlorine. We try to meet a target of 0.0 or 0.2 parts per million of chlorine. So at the end of your leg, that we want to see like 0.2 parts per million. So closer to the system where the tank is, it'll be higher chlorine than at the very end. So the average in Eagle Cliff Road is 0.41, but you can see sometimes it'll go down to 0.01. And that's what makes us nervous. Our turbidity is average of 0.46 NTUs, and the only alarming thing that I don't like in this is your THMs and your HAAs. So THMs and HAAs are a byproduct of chlorine. You gotta put the chlorine in the water to kill all the bugs, neutralize the bugs. The more chlorine you put in, the byproduct after it eats up the bugs is THMs and HAAs. So, and even though your water is filtered through sand filters, it hasn't got all of the tannins, the sort of the brownish color. You can see it, the color, but it's actually not a particle. And that's where the chlorine gets eaten up, and that's why we have to put in more chlorine. So the safety limit for Canadian drinking water guidelines is 100 parts per billion, not million. And your HAAs are 80 parts per billion. Yours are almost double that. You see that with any system that you get from surface water that uses different types of filtration and can't get the TOC out of it.
So if you increased the chlorination, how would that affect
That
us?
would actually raise the THMs even higher.
Okay, so there's a balance between this and chlorination?
It's a real balancing act, yes.
So people that have their home systems, they just have a filter and the UV.
Yeah,
So,
that doesn't get rid of your THMs and HAAs.
No, but people that just have, like what I said, point of entry systems, they don't use chlorine, they use the UV and the filters.
Yeah,
So they've got UV and filters, so why do they need the chlorine?
because Vancouver Coastal Health says we have to have chlorine in the system
And
to
that's,
prove that it neutralizes your coliform.
Is there some way to reduce these?
Yeah, you need a different type of filtration.
Yeah.
That's the
What
only.
would you recommend in the way of filtration? If we're looking at something in the near future, what would you recommend?
I personally like, from what I've seen so far, is, did you go to the,
Yeah, you tested.
the little pilot
Yeah,
treatment
yeah,
plant?
Yeah,
The code,
That-
yeah, the one
yeah.
with code base.
So we had a pilot, if you went by the lake, there was a little sea can, and it had a little pilot filtration. We were putting through 10 gallons a minute through this, and it's a ceramic ultra-membrane filtration. So the water goes through the ceramic, it comes out. The dirty water, so there's no byproduct, so it actually keeps the dirt in one part of the system. We filter that and dry that out, the dirt, and then the water just keeps going through the ceramic membrane filtration, so you have no waste. Like other systems, you can get 10 to 15% waste of your water, like you're just dumping dirty water out. This has none of that. So that's why in Cove Bay, that's what I'm looking at right now, is that type of filtration. So the little pilot project is almost exactly what you guys need, or
what Hood Point needs.
If you want to reduce those.
yeah, if you want to reduce the THMs and the HAAs, that's how you do it.
and that would function without chlorine?
No, you'd still put chlorine, but you would only put minute parts, because the water is so clean, it's like bottled water then, right?
So, your question
Yeah.
is the same one. If Coastal Health requires the chlorine, would they make an exception for this ceramic unit?
No,
They want the chlorine in the pipe to know that the pipe's clean.
and no bugs. So
So we're gonna end up with chlorine
yeah, you wouldn't
anyway,
have as
even
much.
with ceramic.
Bob, you're saying it's a better quality of chlorine or?
Better quality of water, which then
Better
you don't
quality.
need to add all the chlorine into the system.
Okay,
to-
so less chlorine.
Yeah, less chlorine.
Okay.
And they'd be happy with that, even sitting in the pipes. I thought
Oh, we
that
would flush
chlorine-
the pipes anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess what you're saying is if you get rid of all the organic stuff,
Yeah,
which that ceramic filter does.
yeah,
Then you need less chlorine. The
Yeah.
organics react with the chlorine and they won't be there to react, so.
Right, I may be
Yeah.
misunderstanding this, but I thought chlorine was principally added because water sits in pipes a long way from its filtration, and the chlorine keeps it safe in the pipe when there's not a lot of usage.
well, it keeps it neutralizes the E. coli in that and kills the bugs.
Right,
But it doesn't matter if it's flowing fast or just sitting there, you still need that amount of chlorine in the system at the end of your lines.
okay, and if we use the ceramic, we use less chlorine but still achieve that level?
Yes,
I see.
Did they test the THMs and the HAAs with the little?
The pilot project?
The pilot project?
I'm not sure, but the amount they've tested, so say for instance you needed 0.2, or say you needed 2.2 parts per million at the start and left it for 3 days before it dropped to 0.2.
Mhm.
When we did it with the pilot filtration, we put it at 0.2 and it stayed for like 5 days at 0.2. It stayed so much longer without
So you put way less chlorine.
way less chlorine.
So
And it
the
stays a lot
chlorine is
longer.
exhausted as it deals
Yeah.
with stuff, and there's less stuff to deal with.
That's right.
To simplify things, and therefore you
Yeah.
use less and you get the same level.
You get the same at the end, yes.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Okay.
And how much would a system like that cost?
So, no one asked,
I know, I wanna know.
We want to know
yeah,
too,
you
so.
got, you said you got it ready.
Yeah, you did, we're getting a
400,000
price
something.
300,000 to 400,000.
installed.
Yep.
And that's for a little system, or is that's not the?
That was for 20 that would be twice the size of what our pilot was, for 20 gallons a minute.
Yeah,
Which would work for us.
Copay's a lot bigger system
Yeah.
than ours. Yeah, we've only got 94, we've got 600.
Oh, yeah, Cove Bays is like $6 million.
Yeah, there's a big system.
But the little pilot plant in that little sea can,
Yeah, right,
to double that,
yeah,
was like 300,000 to 400,000.
I remember that.
And
How do you figure out how many need 20 gallons a minute?
based on your flow,
So the usage.
yeah. If it was, yeah, you need at least, I was hoping it would only be 10, but in the summer you need at least 20. Then we didn't apply for any grants or anything. There was no advisories, other than the advisory that we're flushing your water mains twice a year. One was in April, and one was in October. And we put an ad in the paper, this is from Vancouver Coastal Health, with the immune compromise. You'll see it in the paper, it says boil the water. That's from Vancouver Coastal Health. That's for all the systems. And then security measures, emergency response. I get a map of of Hood Point. And then we go into the water quality, so
Did you skip over page 10? The major events?
we didn't have any.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so yeah. Your birthday.
Other than the supply main freezing, but that happens every year, so. So when that happens, if the water main does freeze, we connect to Eagle Cliff. So we turn on a valve and we just slowly keep the reservoir full. So people wouldn't even know that water main was froze or not, so.
This may not be the right time, but
Yeah, sure it is.
we were discussing among ourselves, in the event of fire, using the water directly from Honeymoon Lake Reservoir without, we're talking about the possibility of bypassing the filtration, which is a bottleneck, and were there a major fire, letting the lake flow basically through the system, bypassing the filtration and going right into the fire hydrants and standpipes. Is that necessary and is it feasible?
I don't think it's necessary.
And-
We've already fought 2 fires there.
Right,
The one was, what was it, 2 years ago when it was really dry?
yeah.
That was a real big one.
Yeah, you ran hoses all night.
Yeah,
And you didn't drain the tank?
no,
No?
because what we can do is we can actually increase the flow in the chlorination building, right?
Okay. I
You
didn't know.
can't increase that, yeah.
Yeah, we adjust that all the time. When the guys are in the chlorination building, even though they're taking samples, say we try to run it at like 10, 15 gallons a minute. And then all of a sudden, say the long weekend, everybody's drawing water, the tank starts going down, we'll actually increase that to maybe 40 gallons a minute to increase the flow.
So in the event of a fire, you could go up to 50 or 60
Yeah.
gallons a
Well,
minute?
I thought the UV filtration was a limit to how fast you could.
Yeah, we have 3 UV filtrations, each one of them's 20 gallons per minute.
So we'll do what, 60?
So
So
60 gallons.
60 is the max.
Yeah.
At that rate, you can fill that
Yeah.
tank pretty, okay.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you don't want to get into just bypassing it, then,
Well, it was
You're-
only if we didn't have enough.
Yeah.
When you see one of these fires, you suddenly think, water's important.
Okay.
Thank you, that's great.
and they can always draw out of the ocean. You can draft out of an ocean. We've done it before.
So what does that do to a house when the fire's out?
Does it really matter when you're out there?
I'd rather it burn to the ground.
What's your sprinkler system?
I think that's the least of your worries at that time.
Well, if you put the fire out,
Well, you can't get the fire truck out to Tom's house anytime.
Oh, okay, let's not go
Yeah,
there.
let's keep moving.
Okay, so now we're back to water quality. So on page 16 and 17 is just a graph of our turbidity, how hard it is to try. I like to keep a level line, but it's almost impossible based on flows and temperature and turbidity. if you look at, on page 17, the turbidity, see how it started climbing over the summer?
Mhm.
So we actually get in there and clean out your sand filters to try to get it back down again. A little more work than just automatic backwashing.
What's the target?
Turbidity should be 1 MTU, no more than 1 MTU, and your average was 0.46.
Well, we're doing really well there.
And then a whole list of L1 means less than 1. The Vancouver Coastal Health wanted us to put all this in. That's all the samples. And then if we go to, I'll see now, the very first one with ALS. So this is, so we do 2 samples a year from your lake. So this is what chlorine will do for you. So
Keep going.
there you go.
Thank you.
So if you look at the first column, 1 E. coli and greater than 200 parts per million of coliform. We want to have 0. So adding the chlorine gets rid of all of that, the bad stuff there, but there's a price for that. So that's on 1 sample. Your lake doesn't change very much. There's another one, 39 parts per million.
It's better in December than in June.
Yeah, because you get a lot more runoff. Everything's flushed out. But then you get a lot of color. You see the color? This is what is not good for you. The color, you can't, that's the TOC.
14 to 16.
And then the next 2 pages are all the the HAAs and THMs. And then just emergency response.
I assume that all of these metals, there's nothing here that.
Anything that's browned out
Yes.
or highlighted,
Yeah.
like, is over the limit. So you see here it says CDWQC, Canadian Drinking Water
Quality guidelines.
Quality Guidelines. So this here is over, it should only be 15 and it's 90 or 16.
16.
Yeah. See, your E. coli and coliform should be 0s. So when you have that, that's,
Well, that's right out of the lake.
yeah.
Thank you. I know all these standards are the provincial standards that were
That's the Canadian Drinking Water Guidelines.
Canadian drinking.
Yeah. That's what BC goes by. Does anybody have any questions?
If not, I think that's gonna conclude our public information session. I think Steph is probably gonna need a few minutes to switch the cameras and stuff before we go into the local advisory committee meeting.
Local advisory